The cold steel of the handcuffs bit into her wrists, a sharp sting that contrasted with the warm, polished glow of the terminal's marble floors. Dr. Maya Reynolds stood tall, her back to the towering glass windows of Gate D at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, where the harsh white lights reflected off the panes but failed to pierce the shadow of injustice enveloping her. Her tailored navy suit, crisp and elegant, hugged her frame with quiet authority, while her sleek leather suitcase and understated designer handbag rested at her feet, their quality drawing the wrong kind of attention. The faint hum of jet engines seeped through the walls, mingling with the clatter of suitcase wheels and the murmur of hurried travelers. Around her, curious onlookers cast fleeting glances before averting their eyes, their silence a complicit veil over the scene unfolding before them. Two young police officers stood in front of her, their badges glinting under the fluorescent lights, their faces a mix of arrogance and unease. Officer Daniel Holt, the taller and older of the pair, crossed his arms, his thin lips curling into a sneer that barely concealed his contempt. His brown hair was cropped short, and his gray eyes scanned Maya from head to toe, lingering on her expensive attire with a mixture of envy and suspicion. Beside him, Officer Ethan Brooks, younger and less assured, shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his attempt to mimic Holt's toughness undermined by the nervous flicker in his hazel eyes. "Random security check," Holt had said when they first stopped her. But the words dripped with insincerity, and now, as the cuffs tightened, his true intentions were laid bare. "You've got some nice stuff here, lady," Holt drawled, his voice loud enough to draw a few more glances from passersby. "That bag, that suit must have cost a fortune. How can a woman like you afford all this?" The emphasis on woman like you was unmistakable, laced with racial prejudice that hung heavy in the air. Brooks nodded, his voice cracking slightly, as he chimed in, "Yeah, Holt's right. Looks kinda suspicious, doesn't it?" Maya said nothing. Her dark eyes, sharp and unyielding, swept the terminal with the precision of a seasoned investigator. She noted the badge numbers, Holt's 2147, and Brooks' 1892, etched into their name tags. She clocked the positions of the security cameras, mounted on the ceiling, their lenses glinting faintly. She observed the reactions of the crowd, some curious, some indifferent, all too quick to move on. The faint scent of jet fuel lingered, a reminder of the transient nature of this place, where power dynamics shifted with every interaction. Her mind, honed by decades of navigating high-stakes intelligence operations, was already at work, cataloging every detail, every word, every gesture. She was not merely a victim at this moment, she was Dr. Maya Reynolds, director of the National Security Agency. And she was gathering evidence. Holt stepped closer, his breath reeking of stale coffee, as he lowered his voice, though it still carried a menacing edge. "Listen, lady," he said, his tone falsely congenial. "We can make this easy, or we can make it hard. We take you to the airport precinct, search every inch of your bags, and run your name through the system. The paperwork's a mess around. Here you could be stuck for days. Miss whatever fancy meeting you're headed to." He paused, his eyes narrowing as he studied her face for a reaction. Maya's expression remained impassive, her silence unnerving him. "Or," Holt continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "you could make it quick, a little goodwill, you know? Say, $2,000 in cash. Not much for someone like you, right? We forget this ever happened. You walk away, no fuss." He gestured toward her handbag as if expecting her to reach for a wallet stuffed with bills. Brooks, emboldened by Holt's lead, added, "Yeah, just a small fee to keep things smooth." His attempt at confidence faltered, his eyes darting to Holt for approval. Maya's fingers brushed the edge of her smartwatch, a sleek, unassuming device that concealed NSA-grade technology capable of recording audio with crystal clarity. She had activated it the moment Holt approached her, a precaution born of years in the intelligence world where trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. The watch hummed silently, capturing every word, every inflection. But something else stirred in her memory as Holt spoke. His name, Daniel Holt, rang a faint bell. She recalled a recent NSA report, buried in a stack of classified documents on her desk, about a suspected smuggling ring operating through O'Hare. The report had flagged a low-ranking airport police officer as a potential contact for a network trafficking stolen cybersecurity tech. Could this be the same Holt? The possibility electrified her, sharpening her focus. She decided to let him talk, to dig his own grave deeper. Holt's smirk widened, misinterpreting her silence as fear. What? No cash on you? Or, are you just too proud to cooperate? He leaned in closer, his voice hardening. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You're not in charge here. Maya's eyes met his, steady and unblinking, and for a fleeting moment, Holt's confidence wavered. There was something in her gaze, something cold, calculating, and utterly unafraid that didn't align with the frightened traveler he expected. Brooks, sensing the tension, shifted uncomfortably, his hand hovering near his radio as if unsure whether to call for backup or follow Holt's lead. The terminal buzzed around them, a cacophony of boarding announcements, rolling suitcases, and the distant wail of a child. Yet in this small pocket of space, time seemed too slow, the air thick with the weight of what was unfolding. Maya's journey to this moment had begun 18 hours earlier in Berlin, where she had delivered a keynote address at a global cybersecurity summit. As the NSA's first black female director, her presence was both a symbol of progress and a lightning rod for scrutiny. She had chosen a commercial flight back to the US, opting for discretion over the private jet typically reserved for officials of her rank. Her goal was to observe airport security protocols firsthand, unfiltered by the deference shown to high-ranking dignitaries. Her aides and security detail traveled separately, maintaining a low profile as per her instructions. Her attire, a tailored suit, a minimalist handbag, and a single piece of carry-on luggage was chosen to blend in, though its understated luxury had caught Holt's eye. She had cleared customs without incident, and her driver's license was presented as ID to conceal her true position. But as she approached Gate D, heading for the taxi stand, Holt and Brooks had materialized, their steps purposeful. Their eyes locked on her. "Ma'am, we need to see your ID," Holt had said, his tone initially professional but tinged with an undercurrent of disdain. Maya had complied, handing over her license with a calm that seemed to irritate him. He examined it longer than necessary, his questions escalating from routine to invasive. "Where are you coming from? Why are you traveling alone? What's in that bag? How'd you pay for all this?" Each query was laced with insinuation, his assumption that her wealth was illicit barely veiled. Brooks had echoed him, his voice less steady but no less complicit. When Maya questioned their basis for suspicion, "Do you have probable cause or a warrant?" Holt's face had darkened, her knowledge of her rights perceived as a challenge to his authority. "That's enough," he'd snapped. "You're acting suspicious." "Brooks, cuff her." Brooks had hesitated, his eyes flickering with doubt, but under Holt's glare, he'd complied. The cuffs clicking shut around Maya's wrists with a sound that echoed in her ears. Now, as Holt's extortion demand hung in the air, Maya's mind raced, not with fear but with strategy. She knew the law, knew her rights, and knew the weight of the evidence she was amassing. The recording on her watch was already a damning indictment. But she needed more. She needed Holt to incriminate himself further, to reveal any connections to the smuggling ring she suspected. She also knew that her next move would shift the balance of power irrevocably. The terminal's noise faded into the background as she made her decision. "I need to make a phone call," she said, her voice low but firm, cutting through Holt's smugness like a blade. He laughed, a short barking sound that drew a few more glances from the crowd. "A phone call? Who are you gonna call? Your lawyer? Your sugar daddy to bring the cash?" His taunt was meant to humiliate, but Maya's expression didn't change. She repeated, "I need to make a phone call. My phone is in the side pocket of my bag." Her tone brooked no argument, and for the first time, Holt's confidence faltered. He glanced at Brooks, who looked increasingly uneasy, then shrugged. "Fine, let her make her call. Maybe she'll get smart and pay up." Brooks bent down, retrieving the sleek jet-black smartphone from her handbag. It looked unremarkable, but it was a custom-built device with military-grade encryption, designed for secure communications at the highest levels of government. With her hands still cuffed, Maya leaned forward slightly, her voice activating the device with a preset command, "Connect to James." The call connected instantly, a deep, professional male voice answering on the first ring. "Dr. Reynolds, what's the situation?" James Carter, her deputy director at the NSA, was stationed at the agency's headquarters in Fort Meade, Maryland, but his readiness suggested he was always prepared for her call. Maya's voice shifted, shedding the restrained tone of a detained traveler and adopting the commanding authority of her true role. "James, this is Maya. I'm at Gate D, Chicago O'Hare, Terminal 3. I've been detained and handcuffed without cause by 2 airport police officers, Daniel Holt, badge number 2147, and Ethan Brooks, badge number 1892. They've attempted to extort $2,000 from me. I need the rapid response team here immediately. Priority level 1. The words hit Holt and Brooks like a shockwave. Their faces froze, the color draining from their cheeks as the implications sank in. NSA Rapid Response Team. Priority Level 1. Holt's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of dawning horror. Brooks' hands trembled, the phone nearly slipping from his grip as he held it to Maya's ear. The terminal's bustle seemed to fade, the world narrowing to the small space where their fates were colliding. Maya continued, her voice steady and precise. Notify Special Agent in Charge, Sarah Nguyen. I want a full lockdown of this area, all security footage secured, and their devices confiscated. This is not just an isolated incident, Holt, may be linked to the O'Hare smuggling case we're tracking. Move now. James' response was immediate. Understood, Director. The team is en route. ETA, 10 minutes. Stand by. Maya nodded slightly, signaling Brooks to end the call. He fumbled with the phone, his hands shaking as he placed it back in her bag. Holt stared at her, his mouth opening and closing as if struggling to find words. Who are you? He stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Maya turned to face him, her eyes cold and unyielding. You've made a very serious mistake, Officer Holt, she said, each word deliberate and heavy with consequence. You just attempted to blackmail the director of the National Security Agency. The revelation landed like a thunderclap. Holt staggered back a step, his face ashen, his bravado crumbling. Brooks let out a choked gasp, his eyes wide with panic. The crowd around them began to thicken, drawn by the tension radiating from the scene. Whispers rippled through the onlookers, phones emerging to capture the moment. Maya stood motionless, her cuffed hands a stark contrast to the authority in her voice. She had played her hand, and now the wheels of justice were in motion. Holt's mind raced, grasping for a way out. This is a misunderstanding, he blurted, his voice rising in desperation. We were just doing our job. You can't do this. But his words were hollow, drowned out by the weight of his actions. Brooks, overwhelmed, looked to Holt for guidance, but found none. Holt, what do we do? He whispered, his voice cracking. Holt's eyes darted around the terminal, as if searching for an escape, but the reality was closing in. Maya's watch continued to record, capturing their panic, their admissions of guilt. She knew the NSA team was minutes away, their efficiency unmatched. She also knew that Holt's mention in the smuggling report was no coincidence. His behavior bold, reckless, entitled fit the profile of someone with connections, someone who believed he was untouchable. The thought fueled her resolve. This was no longer just about her. It was about dismantling a network that threatened national security. The minutes stretched, each second taut with anticipation. The crowd grew bolder, some recording openly now, their murmurs growing louder. What's going on? Why's she in cuffs? Those cops look scared. The atmosphere shifted, the balance of power tipping as the officer's authority eroded. Holt's hand twitched toward his radio, but he froze under Maya's gaze. Don't, she said softly, but the warning was ironclad. He obeyed, his hand falling limp. Brooks' breathing grew ragged, his eyes darting between Maya and the crowd. The terminal's loudspeaker crackled, announcing a delayed flight to Dallas, but it felt distant and relevant compared to the drama unfolding at Gate D. Then, a ripple moved through the crowd, heads turned, voices hushed. A group of 6 men and women, dressed in plain clothes but exuding unmistakable authority, approached with purposeful strides. Their leader, Special Agent in Charge, Sarah Nguyen, was a compact woman with jet black hair and eyes that missed nothing. Her presence was a force, parting the crowd like a wave. The NSA team moved as a unit, their movements precise, their gazes sweeping the area for threats. Sarah's eyes locked onto Maya, a flicker of concern breaking through her professional mask as she saw her director in handcuffs. Director Reynolds, she said, her voice a mix of respect and urgency. Are you all right? Maya nodded, her composure unbroken. I'm fine, Sarah. These officers, however, are in serious trouble. She gestured toward Holt and Brooks, who stood frozen, their faces pale and slick with sweat. Sarah's expression hardened as she turned to them, her voice clipped. Disarm and detain them. Secure their badges, radios, and any recording devices. 2 agents stepped forward, their movements swift and practiced. Holt made a half-hearted attempt to protest. You can't do this. I have rights. But his voice broke, and he fell silent as his sidearm, radio, and badge were removed. Brooks offered no resistance, his shoulders slumping as his equipment was confiscated. A third agent approached Maya, producing a key to unlock her cuffs. The soft click of the metal releasing was a punctuation mark, signaling the end of Holt and Brooks' brief reign of power. The crowd buzzed, phones raised high, capturing every moment. Sarah issued rapid orders. Lock down this section of the terminal. No one is in or out except authorized personnel. Secure all CCTV footage from the past hour. I want their body cams and personal devices analyzed immediately. The agents dispersed, their efficiency a stark contrast to the chaos Holt and Brooks had created. Maya rubbed her wrists, the faint red marks a reminder of the indignity she'd endured. She turned to Sarah, her voice calm but commanding. Holt may be linked to the smuggling ring we're investigating. Check his communications for any ties to Charles Whitaker, the airport's security chief. This goes deeper than a shakedown. Sarah nodded, already relaying the instructions through her earpiece. Holt, overhearing, blanched, his eyes widening in terror. Whitaker, I don't know what you're talking about, he protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Brooks looked at him, confusion and fear warring on his face. Holt, what's she mean? What smuggling? Holt shot him a glare, but it was too late. The seeds of doubt were sown. Maya watched the exchange, her mind piecing together the puzzle. Whitaker, a high-ranking official with access to every corner of O'Hare, had been on the NSA's radar for months. If Holt was his operative, this incident could be the break they needed to dismantle the network. The terminal's energy shifted as the NSA team took control. Airport Police Supervisor, Sergeant Maria Lopez arrived, her face a mask of shock as she took in the scene. The NSA director free, her officers disarmed and detained, and a federal team asserting authority. Director Reynolds. I don't know what to say, she stammered, her hands twisting nervously. This is a misunderstanding. I'm sure. Maya cut her off, her voice firm but not unkind. Sergeant, your officers committed serious crimes. The NSA and FBI will handle this from here. I suggest you cooperate fully. Lopez nodded, her face paling as she realized the gravity of the situation. Holt and Brooks were led away, their heads bowed, the crowd parting to let them pass. Whispers followed them, a chorus of judgment. Maya remained at the center of the storm, her presence a beacon of authority. She knew this was only the beginning. The smuggling ring, Whitaker's involvement, the corruption festering in O'Hare's security apparatus, it all pointed to a larger threat. She had turned a personal injustice into a national security operation, and she would see it through. As the NSA team secured the area, Maya's thoughts turned to the next steps. The evidence on her watch, the footage from the cameras, the data on Holt's phone, it was all coming together. She glanced at her suitcase, still standing untouched by her feet, a symbol of the normalcy she'd sought and the chaos she'd uncovered. The terminal's lights flickered slightly, casting long shadows across the floor. Maya took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. This was her battlefield, and she was ready to fight. The terminal's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting stark shadows across the polished marble floor of Gate D at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Dr. Maya Reynolds stood at the epicenter of the controlled chaos, her wrists still bearing faint red marks from the handcuffs that had bound her moments ago. Around her, the NSA Rapid Response Team moved with surgical precision, cordoning off the area with an invisible but palpable authority. Special Agent in Charge, Sarah Nugent, barked orders through her earpiece, her sharp eyes scanning the growing crowd of onlookers who lingered at a safe distance, their phones raised to capture the unfolding drama. The air was thick with tension. The hum of jet engines and boarding announcements, a distant backdrop to the confrontation that had just shifted the balance of power. Officers Daniel Holt and Ethan Brooks, now disarmed and stripped of their badges, stood flanked by NSA agents, their faces pale and drawn with the dawning realization of their catastrophic mistake. Holt's earlier bravado had crumbled, replaced by a desperate edge as he struggled against the grip of a towering agent. You can't do this, he shouted, his voice cracking. I have people who'll back me up. You don't know who you're messing with. His words were a futile attempt to reclaim control, but they only deepened the hole he'd dug. Brooks, younger and less defiant, stared at the floor, his hands trembling as he mumbled, Holt, what did you get us into? Maya's gaze was cold, unflinching, as she met Holt's eyes. You've already said enough, officer, she replied, her voice steady but laced with an authority that silenced the room. Your connections won't help you now. She knew Holt's outburst wasn't empty bluster. His mention of people confirmed her suspicion that he was linked to a larger network, one that reached into the heart of O'Hare's security apparatus. The NSA had been tracking a smuggling, ring trafficking, stolen cybersecurity technology through the airport. And Holt's name had surfaced in a classified report as a potential low-level operative. Now, standing in the aftermath of his failed extortion attempt, Maya saw an opportunity to unravel a conspiracy that threatened national security. The crowd murmured, their whispers a low hum as they speculated about the woman in the tailored suit who had turned the tables on two armed officers. Maya's smartwatch, still active, recorded every sound, its NSA-grade encryption ensuring that the evidence was secure. She glanced at Sarah, who was coordinating with her team to secure the terminal's CCTV footage and confiscate Holt and Brooks' devices. Sarah, Maya said, her voice low but commanding, I want Holt's phone analyzed immediately. Cross any communications with Charles Whitaker, the airport's security chief. If Holt's involved in the smuggling ring, we need to know how deep this goes. Sarah nodded, her expression grim. Already on it, Director. We've got techs pulling data from their radios and body cams too. If there's a link, we'll find it. Maya's mind raced, piecing together the puzzle. Whitaker, a high-ranking official with oversight of O'Hare's security operations, had been flagged by the NSA for months. His name had appeared in encrypted communications intercepted from a black market tech syndicate, but hard evidence had been elusive. Holt's reckless behavior might just be the break they needed. Holt, hearing Maya's mention of Whitaker, stiffened, his eyes darting wildly. I don't know any Whitaker. He snapped, but his voice betrayed panic, and his gaze flickered toward the exit as if calculating his odds of escape. Brooks, sensing the shift, looked at him with growing alarm. Holt, what's she talking about? What's smuggling? His voice was barely audible, drowned out by the terminal's ambient noise, but the fear in his eyes was unmistakable. Maya noted the dynamic Holt's desperation, Brooks' confusion and filed it away. Brooks was the weaker link, more likely to crack under pressure. She would use that to her advantage. The NSA team's efficiency was relentless. Within minutes, the area around Gate D was sealed off, yellow tape marking a perimeter that kept curious travelers at bay. 2 agents stood guard, their plainclothes doing little to hide their authority as they scanned the crowd for potential threats. A 3rd agent, a wiry tech specialist named Agent Kim, was already interfacing with the airport's security system, downloading footage from every camera in the vicinity. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, some bold enough to edge closer, their phones still recording. What's going on? A woman in a business suit whispered to her companion. Looks like those cops messed with the wrong person, he replied, nodding toward Maya. She ignored the attention, her focus razor sharp. This wasn't about her pride or personal vindication, it was about justice. And the larger threat lurking beneath the surface. Sergeant Maria Lopez, the airport police supervisor, arrived breathless, her face a mask of shock and dismay. Director Reynolds, she stammered, her hands twisting nervously. I had no idea this was happening. I'll get to the bottom of this, I promise. Maya raised a hand, cutting her off. Sergeant, your officers committed serious crimes. Under your watch, the NSA and FBI will take it from here. I suggest you prepare your department for a full investigation. Lopez's face paled, but she nodded, retreating to confer with her team. Maya knew Lopez wasn't directly responsible, but the rot in her unit ran deep, and she intended to expose it. Sarah approached, holding a tablet displaying preliminary data from Holt's phone. Director, we've got something, she said, her voice low. Encrypted texts between Holt and an unlisted number. They mentioned shipments and clearance at D. The numbers registered to a burner, but we're tracing it. Could be Whitaker. Maya's eyes narrowed. Good, keep digging. I want a full report within the hour, and get the FBI on the line. Olivia Chen at the U.S. Attorney's Office needs to be briefed. Sarah nodded, relaying the orders. The mention of shipments confirmed Maya's suspicions. The smuggling ring wasn't just moving tech, it was likely funneling proprietary NSA software to foreign buyers, a breach that could compromise national security. Holt's role, whether witting or unwitting, was a thread she would pull until the entire network unraveled. Holt, sensing the noose tightening, made a sudden move. He twisted out of the agent's grip, shoving past Brooks and sprinting toward a service corridor near Gate D. Stop him, Sarah shouted, and 2 agents gave chase. their boots pounding against the marble floor. The crowd gasped, phones swiveling to follow the action. Maya remained still, her eyes tracking Holt's desperate flight. The corridor led to a maze of maintenance tunnels, a perfect escape route for someone familiar with the airport's layout. But Holt wasn't dealing with local police now, he was up against the NSA, and they didn't lose targets. The agents, trained for high-stakes pursuits, moved with lethal precision, weaving through startled travelers. Holt ducked behind a baggage cart, his breath ragged, but the agents were closing in. One tackled him to the ground just as he reached a locked door, pinning him face down as he struggled. "Get off me," Holt yelled, but his voice was muffled. As the agents secured his wrists with zip ties, the crowd erupted in cheers, the tension breaking like a dam. Maya watched, her expression unreadable. Holt's escape attempt was another piece of evidence, a sign of guilt that would bury him deeper. Brooks, left behind, sank to his knees, his face buried in his hands. "I didn't know," he mumbled, tears streaking his cheeks. Holt said it was just a quick shakedown, nothing serious. "I swear, I didn't know who you were." Maya crouched to his level, her voice calm but firm. "Officer Brooks, you didn't need to know who I was to know right from wrong. You chose to follow a corrupt officer. You chose to handcuff an innocent citizen. You chose to demand money. Those choices have consequences." Brooks sobbed, his shoulders shaking, but Maya's words were unyielding. She stood, signaling an agent to take him into custody. Brooks was a follower, not a mastermind, but his complicity made him just as culpable. The NSA team regrouped, Holt now restrained and seated on the floor, his defiance replaced by a sullen silence. Sarah handed Maya a preliminary report from the tech team. "Holt's body cam was active during the incident," she said. "We've got audio and video of the entire extortion attempt. Your watch recording corroborates it, it's airtight." Maya nodded, her mind already moving to the next phase. "Send it to Olivia Chen. I want charges filed by the end of the day, civil rights violations, Hobbs Act extortion, and conspiracy. And keep an eye on Whitaker. He's the key." Sarah nodded, her fingers flying across her tablet as she relayed the instructions. The terminal, though still cordoned off, was beginning to return to its usual rhythm. Travelers moved on, their curiosity sated, though whispers of the incident lingered. Maya's phone buzzed, a secure line from an unknown number. She answered, her voice clipped. "Reynolds." A smooth, confident voice responded, one she recognized. Instantly, Charles Whitaker, O'Hare's security chief. "Dr. Reynolds, I hear you've had an unfortunate encounter with my officers," he said, his tone dripping with false concern. "Let's not escalate this unnecessarily. Why don't we meet and discuss a resolution?" Maya's jaw tightened. Whitaker's call was no coincidence, he was testing her, probing to see if she'd back down. "Mr. Whitaker," she replied, her voice icy, "the only resolution will be through the courts. Your officers committed federal crimes, and your involvement will be thoroughly investigated. I suggest you prepare yourself." She hung up before he could respond, her heart pounding with a mix of anger and determination. Whitaker's audacity confirmed his role in the smuggling ring. He wasn't just complicit, he was likely the architect. Sarah approached, her expression tense. "Director, we've got a hit on the burner phone. It's linked to a server in the airport's security office, Whitaker's office." Maya's eyes gleamed with resolve. "Then we move on him. Coordinate with the FBI for a warrant. I want his office searched, his communications seized, and his movements tracked. This ends today." Sarah nodded, relaying the orders as the team sprang into action. The net was tightening, and Maya knew they were on the cusp of a breakthrough. Holt's mistake had exposed a crack in the smuggling ring's armor, and she intended to exploit it fully. The terminal's lights flickered, casting fleeting shadows across the scene. Maya stood at the center, her presence a beacon of authority amidst the chaos. She had turned a personal injustice into a national security operation, and the stakes were higher than ever. Holt and Brooks were just the beginning. Whitaker was the real target, and behind him, a network that threatened the nation's cybersecurity. As the NSA team prepared to move on Whitaker's office, Maya's thoughts turned to the broader implications. This wasn't just about her or the airport, it was about the integrity of the systems she'd sworn to protect. The fight was far from over, but she was ready. The NSA team regrouped, Holt now restrained and seated on the floor, his defiance replaced by a sullen silence. Sarah handed Maya a preliminary report from the tech team. "Holt's body cam was active during the incident," she said. We've got audio and video of the entire extortion attempt. Your watch recording corroborates it. It's airtight. Maya nodded, her mind already moving to the next phase. Send it to Olivia Chen. I want charges filed by the end of the day, civil rights violations, Hobbs Act extortion, and conspiracy. And keep an eye on Whitaker. He's the key. Sarah nodded, her fingers flying across her tablet as she relayed the instructions. The terminal, though still cordoned off, was beginning to return to its usual rhythm. Travelers moved on, their curiosity sated, though whispers of the incident lingered. Maya's phone buzzed, a secure line from an unknown number. She answered, her voice clipped. Reynolds. A smooth, confident voice responded, one she recognized. Instantly, Charles Whitaker, O'Hare's security chief. Dr. Reynolds, I hear you've had an unfortunate encounter with my officers, he said, his tone dripping with false concern. Let's not escalate this unnecessarily. Why don't we meet and discuss a resolution? Maya's jaw tightened. Whitaker's call was no coincidence, he was testing her, probing to see if she'd back down. Mr. Whitaker, she replied, her voice icy, the only resolution will be through the courts. Your officers committed federal crimes, and your involvement will be thoroughly investigated. I suggest you prepare yourself. She hung up before he could respond, her heart pounding with a mix of anger and determination. Whitaker's audacity confirmed his role in the smuggling ring. He wasn't just complicit. He was likely the architect. Sarah approached, her expression tense. Director, we've got a hit on the burner phone. It's linked to a server in the airport's security office, Whitaker's office. Maya's eyes gleamed with resolve. Then we move on him. Coordinate with the FBI for a warrant. I want his office searched, his communications seized, and his movements tracked. This ends today. Sarah nodded, relaying the orders as the team sprang into action. The net was tightening, and Maya knew they were on the cusp of a breakthrough. Holt's mistake had exposed a crack in the smuggling ring's armor, and she intended to exploit it fully. The terminal's lights flickered, casting fleeting shadows across the scene. Maya stood at the center, her presence a beacon of authority amidst the chaos. She had turned a personal injustice into a national security operation, and the stakes were higher than ever. Holt and Brooks were just the beginning. Whitaker was the real target, and behind him, a network that threatened the nation's cybersecurity. As the NSA team prepared to move on Whitaker's office, Maya's thoughts turned to the broader implications. This wasn't just about her or the airport, it was about the integrity of the systems she'd sworn to protect. The fight was far from over, but she was ready. The prosecution's case continued, methodically dismantling the defense. Special Agent Sarah Nugent testified about the NSA's rapid response, describing Holt's escape attempt and Brooks' immediate surrender. Officer Holt's flight was a clear admission of guilt, she said, her voice firm. We recovered encrypted texts on his phone, linking him to Charles Whitaker, O'Hare's security chief, discussing shipments and clearance at the revelation sent a ripple through the courtroom, the scope of the case expanding beyond two rogue officers. Technical analyst Agent Kim presented the digital evidence, walking the jury through the metadata of Holt's communications and the server traced to Whitaker's office. These messages were sent hours before the incident, suggesting Officer Holt was acting under orders, Kim testified, her charts projected for all to see. The FBI's involvement was detailed by Agent Marcus Lee, who described the joint operation to arrest Whitaker, who now faced separate charges. Mr. Whitaker's office contained documents outlining a smuggling network trafficking stolen NSA software, Lee said, his testimony linking the airport incident to a national security breach. The defense's case was an uphill battle. Callahan argued that Holt acted under pressure. His extortion demanded a momentary lapse in a high-stressed environment. Officer Holt was overworked, underpaid, and made a poor decision. He told the jury, his voice earnest but unconvincing. He questioned Brooks' motives for cooperating, suggesting he exaggerated Holt's role to save himself. Tran, representing Brooks, leaned heavily on her client's remorse and inexperience. Ethan Brooks was a rookie, following a senior officer's lead, she said, her tone pleading. His cooperation with the prosecution shows his willingness to make amends. Brooks took the stand, his voice trembling as he admitted his role. I didn't know Dr. Reynolds was the NSA director, he said, tears in his eyes. Holt said it was just a quick way to make some cash. I'm sorry, I was wrong. His testimony, though self-serving, corroborated the prosecution's narrative. Further damning Holt, The trial's climax came during closing arguments. Chen stood before the jury, her voice resonant with conviction. Daniel Holt and Ethan Brooks betrayed their badges, their oaths, and the public's trust, she said, gesturing to the evidence. They targeted Dr. Reynolds because of her race and perceived wealth, assuming she was an easy mark. Their actions weren't a mistake, they were crimes, rooted in prejudice and greed. The evidence is overwhelming. Audio, video, texts, and testimony. Justice demands accountability. Callahan countered, urging leniency. My client made a grave error, but he's not a monster, he said. A long prison term serves no one. Tran echoed the plea for mercy, emphasizing Brooks' youth and cooperation. The jury retired to deliberate, the courtroom emptying into a tense silence. Hours later, the jury returned, their faces solemn. Judge Ellison called for order as the foreman stood, his voice steady. We, the jury, find defendant Daniel Holt guilty of violating civil rights under color of law and guilty of conspiracy to commit extortion under the Hobbs Act. We find defendant Ethan Brooks guilty of violating civil rights under color of law and guilty of conspiracy to commit extortion under the Hobbs Act. Holt collapsed into his chair, his face ashen, while Brooks closed his eyes, accepting his fate. The gallery erupted, reporters scrambling to file stories as Judge Ellison banged her gavel. Sentencing is set for 2 weeks, she declared, dismissing the court. The sentencing hearing was a somber affair, the courtroom less crowded but no less charged. Chen argued for severe penalties, citing the case's impact on public trust. These officers abused their authority, targeting a citizen based on race and attempting to profit from it, she said, her voice firm. Their actions endangered national security by exposing a smuggling ring. A strong sentence is necessary to deter future misconduct. Callahan pleaded for leniency, citing Holt's family and potential for reform. Tran highlighted Brooks' cooperation, requesting a reduced term. Maya, invited to give a victim impact statement, stood before the court, her voice calm but powerful. This case is not about me, she said, her eyes sweeping the room. It's about the erosion of trust when those sworn to protect us act on prejudice and greed. Officers Holt and Brooks violated their oaths, but their punishment must serve as a reminder that integrity is non-negotiable in law enforcement. The system must hold itself accountable to rebuild the public's faith. Her words hung in the air, a call to action that resonated beyond the courtroom. Judge Ellison delivered her verdict, her voice stern. Daniel Holt and Ethan Brooks, you were entrusted with the sacred duty to uphold justice. Instead, you chose to abuse your power, act on racial bias, and attempt to enrich yourselves through extortion. Your actions are a disgrace to the badge you once wore and a stain on the law enforcement community. She paused, her gaze fixed on the defendants. Mr. Holt, your leadership in this scheme and attempt to flee demonstrate a lack of remorse. The court sentences you to 15 years in federal prison. Holt's head dropped, his hands gripping the table. Mr. Brooks, your cooperation and youth are noted, but your complicity cannot be excused. The court sentences you to 10 years in federal prison. Brooks nodded, tears streaming down his face. The gavel fell, sealing their fates. The aftermath was swift and far-reaching. Charles Whitaker, O'Hare's security chief, was indicted on charges of conspiracy and trafficking. His arrest sparking a broader investigation into the airport's operations. The Port Authority implemented sweeping reforms, including mandatory anti-bias training, increased body cam usage, and an independent oversight board. The case became a national touchstone, fueling debates on police reform and racial justice. Maya's handling of the incident earned her widespread acclaim. Her calm professionalism was a model for leadership under pressure. At the NSA's Fort Meade headquarters, she returned to her office. The Washington Post headline on her desk proclaiming, NSA directors, stand at O'Hare exposes corruption, sparks reform. She felt no joy in Holt and Brooks' downfall, only a quiet satisfaction that justice had prevailed. The smuggling ring's dismantling was a victory, but the fight for a fairer system was ongoing. As she picked up a new intelligence report, her phone buzzed with a call from the White House, signaling her next mission. Maya took a deep breath, ready to continue her work, knowing that every step forward strengthened the nation she served.